Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, a man who keeps all his nuclear secrets in a deputy dog lunchbox buried in his backyard, my brother Mike.
I got more secrets than that, too. And I got a $6 million man action figure, and I got some incriminating photos of you in there. So, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so, government. You're getting my secrets.
Yeah, it's Fort Knox in Mike's backyard back there. Those incriminating photos you have of me, I don't think are going to be as damning as you would imagine. Most people have a pretty low opinion of me anyway, and so I don't know what those photos are going to do for you.
Yeah. Maybe someday we'll find out, huh?
When I run for office, what you're going to drop a dime on me? Is what you're telling me? Okay.
Yeah. If you run for office, the campaign can withstand whatever I can put out there. If somebody puts you up there, you will not be torn down.
Yeah, that's true. All I got to do is get up. We're back this week after a week off. I went on vacation. We were planning on recording an episode for you last week, but the Wi-Fi in my hotel was such garbage. I was like, why even try? Let's not even go down that road. It would just be a nightmare and a hassle. If you can't count on Super 8 motel
Wi-Fi, then
I know.
I mean, what can you count on?
What has this country? This will be the platform I run on. We'll be like, with better Wi-Fi in the Super 8s. Chant it with me. It was not good. It was actually a Holiday Inn, but it was not a great Wi-Fi situation. So we decided to cut that. We'll come with you, but you get a new episode this week. Lots of Royals content out there from other people. So 1 week without a little Royals Weekly won't kill you. But we are glad to be back. I'm glad to be back. It's love talking about the Royals. Mike, are you ready to talk a little bit about the Royals as they stand today?
I am excited to get back into it.
All right, let's talk about roster news first then. In roster news, it may sound weird, but we have actually never got a chance to talk about the Whit Merrifield trade. We recorded our last episode the day before Whit Merrifield was traded. He got traded, and then 2 weeks went by, and we haven't had an episode since then. So, Mike, let's talk a little bit about the Whit Merrifield trade. We're a little late, but hey, we've been late to everything in our lives. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that trade. He went to the Blue Jays in exchange for Samad Taylor and Max Castillo. Samad Taylor is kind of a second baseman, utility player, good athlete, quick, more pop than it looks like. He looks like a skinny guy who wouldn't hit with any power at all. He actually has a surprising amount of pop to his bat. He's hitting .763 as an OPS in AAA in 2022, though he's hurt right now. Kind of a candidate for if Drew Saylor and that team can turn his bat around, can help him unlock some power, then it looks like a really good piece for the Royals. Max Castillo, the other piece of the trade, is a right-handed pitcher who's already got some big league time. He's pitched a few innings for the Blue Jays before he came to the Royals organization. A decent fastball, a good changeup. The slider is kind of uncertain. Nobody really knows exactly how good that pitch can be. Opinions vary on that. Right now he's in AAA, starting, I think, for the moment down there. He has done some relief pitching as well, but we'll see how those two guys end up. I'm excited for both in terms of their return. Mike, what do you think of the return that the Royals got for Whit Merrifield?
Well, I'm really high on Castillo. From what I heard in Toronto, he was relieving, and then they had him start a little bit, and that was kind of the reason that they sent him back down, was because they were trying to stretch him out so he could come up and be a starter. And so I'm excited. His fastball is not an elite pitch or anything like that, but the changeup is a next-level pitch. I really like the way that he throws. I think he's got still potential, as he's still pretty young as well. So I'm excited about Castillo as maybe the best, other than maybe Drew Waters at the 35th pick that came kind of early on. I think Castillo is probably the best prospect that we got at the trade deadline. And there's some other guys that I think are very interesting. I think Rooker's pretty interesting as well, the guy we got for Cam Gallagher. But I really do like Max Castillo, and I think he's got a future in this rotation. If you can get his fastball to play up just a little bit, I think you have a guy that can be a permanent fixture of a rotation.
Yeah, maybe you turn his slider into something that's 55 grade or even major league average. I'm not exactly sure where it is. I've looked at some film of him, and I can't really tell you even where I sit on his slider at this point. But if he can come with a 3-pitch mix that includes a fastball that's probably average right now, and a slider that's probably just above, or not a slider, a changeup that's just above average, if he can get that 3-pitch mix to all be average or better and keep good command, yeah, he could certainly find a place in this rotation. This rotation's got a lot of back-end starter types, and that's kind of what he is. And so he's really going to be fighting guys like John Heasley, Chris Bubich, and that group, maybe Drew Parrish in a year or so. He's going to be fighting a lot of guys. Zerpa, yeah, for back-end jobs. So they should have that pretty much filled out. It's the front of their rotation where they got a little few question marks. And Castillo certainly isn't going to be that. But at the very least, he's a swing man for you. He's depth in the starting rotation, and they're going to need that moving forward. Because whether or not you have 5 good starting pitchers, you're going to need 8 or 9. And so it's good to have him in the organization. You're good to see a guy who's pitched a little bit at the major league level. He is their only advanced arm that they got. And so it was good to see them
and
get
is still young.
And he's still relatively young. I think he's only 23, maybe 24. I think just 23. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of opportunity to develop him as well. I think overall, I'd like to sort of reflect on the trade deadline as a whole and talk a little bit about how we feel about the trade deadline going down. We talked a lot leading up to it about what we wanted from the team. We wanted them to trade Whit Merrifield, Michael A. Taylor, and Andrew Benintendi. They traded 2 of them. Mike, what grade would you give the Royals trade deadline as a whole?
So I gave it a C+, but let's remember what we said. They had to trade all 3 for it to be a successful trade deadline. And so I don't feel like it was all that successful, but I gave them a C+ anyway because of honestly what they got from that 35th pick. That was kind of the thing that tipped it a little bit for me. If they don't trade that 35th pick for Drew Waters and Hoffman and C.J. Alexander, who looks really good right
he's
now,
hitting real
honestly.
well.
If you've been looking at what C.J. Alexander is doing in the minors, he's actually doing pretty well. Who it looked like he was probably just a throw-in in that deal. But if they don't get that stuff, this is a failing grade for me. Okay, and that stuff didn't necessarily happen at the deadline. But I think when you look at it as a whole, the stuff they got for that 35th pick, even getting Mills back from Seattle for Carlos Santana, and then also the stuff they did closer to the deadline, which is Castillo and Taylor and who'd they get for Benintendi?
That was T.J. Sycamore and Beck Way and Chandler Champlain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Beck, yeah. The 3 guys they got from the Yankees for Benintendi. When you look at it as a whole, I'm giving them a C+, partially also because they kept Michael A. Taylor, which I don't love, but I do like some of the pieces that they got. I think Rooker's kind of interesting, even though he's a little bit more of an older prospect. He's always hit in the minors. The limited opportunities he's had in the majors, he hasn't really hit. But I think he's an interesting right-handed bat when they kind of need some right-handed bats in the system. But no, some of those guys really, I think, are things you can dream on. Drew Waters, Castillo, Sycamore, and Beck Way are both guys that I think will find the majors some way. Maybe it's as a reliever for Beck Way, but I think they do eventually get to the majors. So C+ for me, could have been better.
I'm going to give them a D+, and here's why. I was very outspoken about if they don't trade all 3 of those guys, it is a failing deadline. Why? Because I'm not the type of person who lowers the bar so low for the Royals just because I know they can't clear a high bar. Our expectations as fans and commentators for the Royals are so low sometimes. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to lower my expectations for them. I gave them a D+ because they didn't trade Michael A. Taylor. They didn't do what I said they needed to do in order to make it a non-failure. So it's a failure. I'm not lowering the bar for them. Do I like the pieces they got back? Yeah, I like the pieces they got back. I think I like Samad Taylor better than some do. I like the idea of getting a hitter.
I like the idea
either. Of getting a hitter that Drew Saylor can work with, an athlete, a guy who's got some versatility defensively and is a good athlete, I think is something you always want to bring into this system because you have such good hitting development. But I like Max Castillo and TJ Sycamore, and I think that was pretty good to get those guys. I am a little upset, or a little sort of upset's the wrong word, let down that they didn't get somebody I would consider a really high-end pitching prospect. But the thing that really gets me is you needed to trade Michael A. Taylor because his value will never be any higher, and you didn't do it. That's a 3-foot putt that you missed in my mind. And so, no, I'm not giving you a passing grade just because you got some good pieces. And they are good pieces. I don't want people to think that they're not. There are some good pieces. There's good value in some of these trades. But you had a very obvious trade deadline in front of you. You had Michael A. Taylor, Benintendi, and Whit Merrifield. and you couldn't get it done. You couldn't just cross that very low bar. And so I'm sorry, it's a deep loss. I'm glad they traded Gallagher. I like Rooker, but I wanted to see Michael A. Taylor gone, and I would have been happy to see a bullpen guy gone too.
Two other things here about the deadline that were a little disappointing. One, when we saw all the value that guys were getting or teams were getting back for marginal sometimes bullpen arms, and we didn't get rid of Barlow or Stalmont or Clark or any of these guys that may, or even Amir Garrett, who's not going to bring back a whole lot, but we didn't get rid of any of those bullpen arms that seems like you could have gotten a pretty decent prospect for. That hurts a little bit. And then the other thing is, when we traded Andrew Benintendi to the Yankees, there was a lot of talk, and you even said this. This is a in your face. This is a face, Mark. Okay, you said, "Oh well, a lot of times teams just don't want to give up those higher rated pitching prospects," and it looked like that. It looked like okay, they got 3 guys instead of a higher rated guy. Then the Yankees turn around and trade away those higher rated guys for bullpen arms. It's like, wait, it's obvious they weren't like, oh, we're not getting rid of those guys. They got rid of them immediately. So why weren't we going for some of that premier talent instead of getting a plethora of guys, which even if they make the major league level, can never be the 4 WAR a year kind of guy, That was a little both those things were a little disappointing to me. Is we didn't get rid of a bullpen arm in what seemed like a hot bullpen market. We didn't get any of that elite level pitching talent when the Yankees at least were willing to get rid of it.
That's probably a little bit of a disappointment there. I thought teams in my mind just don't give that stuff up. I'm shocked that the Yankees were willing to give that up for a bullpen arm. Honestly, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But if they were doing it, the Royals should have been in on that, because that's value out there to be had, especially for a thing that your system just does not have right now. You don't have elite pitching prospects in the Royal system right now. Asa Lacy, unless he can regain a lot of his value, is no longer an elite pitching prospect. And so they don't have any, right?
He's
maybe
bad.
Ben Caderna, but he's so far away. And, Frank Mazzucato so far away. And so, they could use some more advanced elite pitching prospects. They didn't get any at this trade deadline. That doesn't mean it was, a complete bust. I don't want people to think that we're just like dogging on the trade deadline and we don't like anything that, JJ Piccolo and Dayton Moore do. No, I think they got good value. I think they made some good trades. I just wish that they had gone the whole way, done everything they should have done, and traded Michael A. Taylor and maybe traded some bullpen arms in there too. That's all I'm saying. They did do a few other things roster-wise this week. John Heasley went down and then came back up, or actually he came up and then went back down, made one start, went back down. Brent Rooker, Mike mentioned him earlier. He was brought up and made his Royals debut. They got him in the Cam Gallagher trade. He went 2 for 3 in his first game back, so that was good. Or in his major league, or not his major league debut, his Royals debut. Mike just changed something on our rundown, so that threw me there for a second. Rooker contributed to a week that was pretty solid for the Royals this week. They went 4-3. That brings their overall record to 48-68. I keep looking. Every time I look at their overall record, they're exactly 20 games under 500. It never changes. It's like they are exactly 20 games under 500.
You feel like, but here's the thing. When they started playing decent baseball, they were 20 games under 500.
They've been 500 since then, and that record's just going nowhere, right? Here comes a 72 and 92 season.
And you feel like, they played pretty well.
I know.
Pretty well lately. What's that record looking like?
20 games under
500.
It's just like it is, as it will always be. So yeah, that's what's wild for them. But they have been playing better lately. They took 3 of 4 from the White Sox. That was a great series for the Royals. They looked really good in that series. The White Sox. I'm sorry. The White Sox. It's. I shouldn't feel so, giddy at but they have Tony La Russa, who I do not like, and they're a rival, and they're just not any good right now. But anyway, then the Royals.
I'll tell you what, break them up.
Yeah, we'll take them. I'll take Lewis Roberts. I'll take him if you guys don't want him. Yeah. I'll take who's that? Kopech. We'll take Kopech. So they took 3 or 4 from the White Sox. Then came in a juggernaut. The best team in baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They were on a 12-game winning streak when they rolled into Kansas City, I think. And then they took the first 2.
Yeah, I think it was a 10-game when they rolled in. Or
they took.
I think, didn't it get to 12?
Because they did take the first 2 games. Or something like that. Right. The first one was the Royals were competitive in it. Daniel Lynch pitched a pretty good game, battled through 5 innings. The second game was a complete blowout. Brad Keller just came out and crapped the bed, looked like, just one of his really bad starts. And then this game, Brady Singer, this last game played today, Brady Singer spun a gem, and they were able to get at least one win from that Dodgers series, which is great. You have a week like that, you go 4-3, you're going to have some good performances. Mike, tell us about who really helped carry the Royals to a winning week this week.
Well, okay, so this is the nickname that I think we're settling on now. We're starting to settle on as a Royals fandom.
I don't like it.
Pasquatch.
I don't like it.
All right? Vinnie Pasquantino as Pasquatch. It's great because it's not really all that derivative, Italian breakfast is very derivative. We already had a country breakfast, Italian nightmare. We already had the Nigerian nightmare in this town. No, Pasquatch I think is okay. I think that's okay.
It's 50 grade at best. I'm not digging it.
Oh, get out of here. I'm taking it. It's good enough for me. So Vinnie Pasquantino is my strong performer. Guy has been hitting the ball really hard. He just hasn't had a whole lot of luck go his way. Well, this week it really started going his way. 10 out of 22 with a double, 4 home runs, 6 RBI, and 2 walks to 1 strikeout. Okay. In that White Sox series especially, it was unbelievable. He had 3 out of the 4 games he hit a home run. And so watching him, and he hit another one today, it's been really good to see him finally get some results from all the hard
we
contact
said that this was going to happen. We said, the process is good, the results aren't right now, but this is what you're going to get from Pasquantino. He's going to have weeks like this. He's going to be a hitter that's going to strike out only roughly as much as he walks. He's going to put the ball over the fence. Now, his swing plane creates some more line drivey. It's almost like a line drivey swing. You almost wouldn't expect it from a power hitter like him, but he is going to hit quite a few balls out. So great to see him come in and really.
He's going to hit a lot of balls.
He's going to hit a lot of balls off the wall too. Yeah, that's the kind of guy he's going to be. Some of those are going to get over, and some of them are going to go off the wall because it's a real line drivey swing kind. Almost. It's got enough plane to hit the ball out and hit it off the ground, which is good. So great to see that from him. Happy for him because I know it must be tough when you're constantly hitting balls hard right at guys or on the ground or something like that. He carried the offense. The defense was carried by one Brady Singer. His name's not Bradley, it's Brady. But Brady just doesn't sound distinguished enough. I don't know. I know. One Brady Singer the third. I'm giving him a third. He pitched like he was of the third today. And he pitched really well this week. He got 2 starts this week. He went 13 1/3 innings pitched, gave up only 6 hits, only 1 run in those 13 1/3, 13 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. I love that. Well, that's not correct because he walked somebody today, or he walked a few guys today. I don't know where I got that number from. 3 walks. Sorry. 3 walks in those 13 innings. I know.
It takes a week off and just
it's rusty because I've never made a fact error on this podcast before. I'm all about the facts. But no, one way or the other, whether you slice it 3 walks or 1 walk, Brady Singer shoved this week, and it's coming to the point where you actually feel really good about their chances to win games in his starts. Where you're like, man, I feel like Brady Singer's probably going to give us a really good start, and we have a really good chance to win, even against the Dodgers today. It was today is our chance to really grab a win in this series because Singer could come out. We saw him shut down the Yankees earlier in the year. We saw him shut down the Dodgers today. He can do that sort of thing, right? And that's how he looked so good today, in and out with that 2-seamer. Slider was keeping guys off balance all day. It was amazing. Great to see from him. And he looks like, you mentioned it the last time we had an episode. Yeah. He's the foundation around which you build a starting rotation. So, I think that's the case.
Now, still only threw 6 change-ups today, okay? But you and I think, are both of the idea that he should be in that 10% to 15% range, which, in case you're wondering, and if you throw 100 pitches, is about 10 change-ups or 15 change-ups, right? That's not bad. He threw 6 today, and 6 is the most he's thrown in a few starts. So, I would like to see that go up, and I think it will. I think over the offseason, he's going to get more confident in that pitch as he works with it. And now that he's thrown it in a game some, I feel like next year you're going to see him start to throw that.
I think that's true, especially in starts when he feels like his 2-seamer and slider maybe don't have – like we saw a couple starts ago, his velocity was down a little bit. He was throwing that 2-seamer 92, 93 instead of 94, 95. And you could tell he didn't have his real sharp stuff. And he mistakenly didn't mix in more changeups. And he got hit for I think he gave up 4 runs in 6 innings. Yeah, it wasn't a terrible start, but it wasn't a good one.
Yeah.
I think those are the type of starts where you'll start to see him in the future, hopefully anyway, lean more on that changeup. That's when he should really be throwing it more. Okay? It's fine if he only throws 6 of them in days like today when his other 2 pitches are both on and he's really sharp. But in days when they're not on, it's a good time to go ahead and mix in more changeups, keep guys off balance with your pitch mix, and then you don't have to have 2 60-grade pitches that day. You can just have a couple of 3 50-grade pitches instead of 2 60-grade pitches, if that makes sense. So he pitched really well today, pitched really well this week. Hopefully he can lean on that change up a little bit more on days when he's not super sharp.
Yeah, me and Josh Kaiser of Royals Farm Report, we were talking about that exact same thing the other day because he kind of brought it up Singer in his last start, I think he threw 1 changeup or something crazy, really low. And he kind of asked the question, does he need a changeup? And I kind of said, when he's at his absolute best with his command, he might not need one. We saw that before he started throwing it. He hit the Indians for when they were the Indians, I think, back in the day, through 7 innings without throwing a changeup. When Brady Singer is absolutely at his best, top velocity on the 2-seamer, spotting it the best he can, he may not need a changeup. But it's on those, you're going to have that stuff once every 4 times or something, So you really need it for those other times. And I hope in the offseason it takes a step forward and he feels like it becomes a viable option. And this is also very important, and this is why you see older guys do it. When he starts to slow down as far as his arm, when he starts to lose that velocity in his career, he's really going to need that.
Do you want to pitch until you're 35, Brady Singer? Then you better learn how to throw that changeup more consistently and more frequently because look at Zach Greinke right now. He throws 4 or 5 pitches, and it's the fact that he throws 4 or 5 distinct pitches that's really keeping him relevant as a starting pitcher, despite the fact that he only throws 90 now. And so, yeah, I hope that he works on that eventually, but he's doing great right now. So keep it rolling, Singer, because right now you're our stopper. You're our number one. You're our ace. And so a guy who's not really our ace in the lineup is a guy you're going to talk about next, Mike. He had a pretty weak performance this week and has really not played well since the All-Star break.
Yeah, Hunter Dozier has struggled. They've talked about it a little bit on the broadcast. 3 for 18 this week with 0 RBI. 0 extra base hits, 8 strikeouts to only 1 walk.
That's not good.
That hurts. Okay. So, and this is another thing that I talked about, and I can't remember who I talked about it on Twitter with.
Oh,
you let me run the Twitter account.
Mistake of my life.
Twitter, a lot more Twitter interacting than I normally do. But I talked with somebody about what his role should be moving forward. It might have been Kevin. Royal Kev.
Royals reporter.
Whatever his name is. Good guy. Smart. Talk good. Yeah, Royals report. And so I basically put out there that, hey, listen, I would love to see the Royals are not going to be able to get rid of Hunter Dozier. Okay, they're not going to be able to trade him or anything like that, and they wouldn't in any way because they just like him too much. And so I think moving forward, if he takes Ryan O'Hearn's spot, I think there's some positivity to that, and not just like a hey, only pinch hit thing. I'm saying he takes his roster spot, and O'Hearn
hasn't played in like 2 weeks, so you're basically saying if we just never play Hunter Dozier.
I know. I'm not talking about that. No. I'm not talking about never playing Hunter Dozier. But I think he becomes a guy that plays once or twice a week, and he's so much more versatile than Ryan O'Hearn is, and he's right-handed, and that's going to be where the Royals need bats. They're going to need right-handed bats moving forward, not left-handed bats. And so I would say, hey, he's a guy who can play third base and first base and right field and left field in a pinch. So he is now that pinch hitting option that we let play once a week or twice a week. And that's it. And you're okay with that because, yes, he makes a lot of money for the Royals, but you're never going to be able to get rid of him anyway. So
they're going to have to eat
he's just that guy now.
Just there's nothing nobody wants him. There's nothing to do there. Now you just sort of have to find a way to get as much value as you can out of it and limit his exposure a little bit. I think it is too, honestly.
And I think that's how you do it. And those one day a week is against a lefty.
I mean, some guys can't really do it that way. Some guys have to play all the time to keep their timing and that sort of stuff. But if he can find a way to be successful as a once a week, maybe at the most twice a week player, then you could actually imagine a future where Hunter Dozier has an OPS over 800 because he's only facing lefties and, only plays once to twice a week. I can imagine that future. That's possible. Pinch hitter here and there, filling in when guys are hurt at different spots, but he's not a guy you want to play every day. He's not a guy you want having to count on, not good enough to be a DH and then can't field. I mean, he's just not that guy. So put him on your bench, let him be your bench bat. If he's a good character guy, great. Have him be a leader in the clubhouse in some way. But you just really can't afford to play him every day on a team you're hoping will be competitive.
It just popped in my head when I just really wasn't paying
That's
attention
usually
to what
what's
you're
happening.
saying. When he buys batting gloves, does he have to buy both of them?
Oh, because he only has one.
The left-handed one. Because he only wears one.
Why are the...
So is he buying batting gloves?
If you're ever wondering why Mike says stuff that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, it's because he's not paying attention when I'm saying anything. This is the classic marks of a psychopath, when somebody who doesn't listen, can't just connect.
It just popped into my head. Like, does he just get one left-handed batting glove?
Sure he does.
A professional baseball player. And they give him whatever they want. Or is he out there I got to buy my batting gloves? Oh man, but I'm buying two. And
Hunter Dozier's not running down to
away.
Dick's Sporting Goods for batting gloves. Okay, that's just not happening. Anyway.
I don't know what he does. Is it okay? But they make them in sets.
Whatever. We're moving on. I'm moving on to my week performer. He's basically the pitching version of Hunter Dozier. He's probably a little more valuable than that. But Brad Keller had a pretty poor week this week, a pretty rough week this week. Really just yesterday. He only made one start this week, but yesterday he went 3 innings in that second Dodgers game, gave up 9 hits, 8 earned runs in those 3 innings, 3 home runs, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. I think 7 guys hit before they got 1 out yesterday in that first inning. And so it was...
Oh, yeah, I turned it on.
The game was already over
late.
at that point.
We were down 5-0.
And so, yeah, it was one of those ones where it's like the first inning happens and you're like, well, Knight just got freed up. What am I going to do? Play some Legend of Zelda? And so, he took him out of the game in that first inning. Fastballs right down Broadway, a lot of them. And they did exactly what you would imagine the Dodgers, the best team in baseball, would do with those. They took him out of the yard. And so he's just one of those guys, man. He's a guy who his overall numbers are going to look like Major League average basically most of the time. But there's more in there. If he could develop a third pitch that was decent, he would be a better pitcher. That if he could command his fastball better, he would be a better pitcher. But he's just not there. And I don't know why they're not ensuring that he develops that pitch. I don't know. I'm sure they're working on his command with him a lot. But he's another guy like Singer. I don't know why we've never talked about this before, but Brad Keller has basically 2 pitches. They say he has 3 because they draw a distinction between his 4-seam fastball and his sinker. Doesn't really matter because his sinker at this point is so bad, it's not even a major league pitch.
Well, that's the thing.
It's very good.
Neither one of those pitches get enough movement that they have a whole lot of value. Mm-hmm. Like his sinker doesn't run enough horizontally to have value. His 4-seam fastball doesn't ride enough to have, or doesn't carry enough to have elite movement or to be anything like average or above average. So really, you're not really even throwing fastballs. Okay, then what do you have that is a better pitch? Okay, your slider. Yeah, his slider's slightly above average. But you can't carry an entire.
And occasionally
he
commands his 4-seamer well enough
that's not going to work.
That it can be okay. But he has to have good command with that every time because it's not a swing and miss pitch. And so I don't know why they've never said, "Hey Keller, let's work on another pitch for you." That changeup, he has a changeup technically. I think he throws it less than 5% of the time. It goes pretty hard. It's like 90 mile an hour as a changeup. And so he needs to either be refining that or coming. I'd be interested to see him throw like a split finger or to work on something like that. I think that'd be an interesting thing for him, or a cutter. I think that might be interesting. He needs to do something because right now the arm talent does not match the results from him. And so get on something because he's better than. He has the potential to be better than Major League average, and right now he's only ever going to be Major League average at best if he keeps going the way he's going.
Yeah, and it sucks kind of for him because he's in a spot where he's a back of the rotation kind of guy, but you can't settle on back of the rotation kind of guys that are going to be out in 2 innings every third start.
No.
That's not what you're looking for in the back of the rotation kind of guy. You're looking for a guy who's going to go 5 every time. Like he just doesn't. Those explosions kill bullpens. They really hurt teams.
Yeah,
more
and
than
the thing is,
just losing that day.
Overall numbers wise, he could end up looking similar to a guy like John Heasley, but you'd go with the John Heasley because Heasley's going to give you 5. Maybe he'll give up 4 runs every time out, but you'd rather have a guy like Heasley who's not going to walk everybody, who's not going to destroy your bullpen because he's out after the first 2 innings, that sort of thing. Because honestly, they're more reliable. You know what you're going to get from him, and so yeah, I think Kaler has the potential, and I think if he leaves the Royals, then he'll end up probably maybe getting better with somebody else. But I'd like to see the Royals turn him into something. He doesn't have that much longer until he hits free agency. And so maybe they get one more good year out of him and then bye-bye, he's gone. So we'll see. I hope he bounces back. I hope he plays well. But he did not play well yesterday. I'll tell you that right now. Which is interesting because I actually thought up my theme of the week yesterday when I watched the Royals get trounced by the Dodgers. And the theme was there's still a long way to go. We're happy with how the young guys have played. They're 500 baseball for their stretch since basically the All-Star game. But when you watch that Dodgers series, when you see the team that is at the peak of the mountain, you realize that the Royals are still a significant distance from that peak because they're making mistakes the Dodgers never dream of making. They got pitchers out there doing so much more stuff. They got Tyler Anderson went out there today and pitched. He is basically Chris Bubich, only with way better command and a better pitch mix. And you're like, well, what if the Royals were smart enough to give Bubich this pitch mix and fix his command? You just see organizationally, they are up here and the Royals are down here. There's here's where the Royals are. Here's where we want the Royals to get in the next year. And here's where the Dodgers are, right? There's still a couple of levels way above where the Royals are right now. And so it was great to see a good team like that. And hopefully the Royals look at that and say, hey, that's ultimately where we want to be, but we got a ways to go because I think ultimately they still do have a ways to go.
Yeah, and it really starts with their pitching, and that's my theme.
Yeah.
When starting pitching is competitive, so are we, right? So we saw this week some really good examples of competitive starting pitching from Daniel Lynch and Brady Singer and Bubich. And I'm not saying, nails starting pitching. I'm just talking about competitive. Yesterday was non-competitive from Brad Keller. And so we had no chance. So when that starting pitching is competitive with the offense that we've kind of cultivated, the young guys, and there are going to be days when those young guys struggle as a group, but we can still scratch 3, 4, 5 runs across because they're a little faster. They're a little more athletic. They were able to get this and one guy hit one out. Vinnie, that game we won 4-2 against the White Sox. Our offense didn't actually do great that whole day, but we were able to get a guy on here, hit a home run, a guy on there, hit a home run, and bam, we score 4 runs. And so when the pitching becomes competitive, and like it even really has been overall for the last month, it has been a lot more competitive, but that's why watching the Royals has become much more fun. And so just keep with some competitive pitching. We're going to talk a little bit more about how it can get better later.
It's really, really, really important that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whatever platform you use. I mean, right now, literally pause it, go into your little app thing or whatever, or go onto YouTube, subscribe, rate, and review us. We haven't gotten a review in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month. I'm not exactly sure how long. But we want those reviews. We love them. We love hearing from you, and that's how you talk to us, through the reviews. So go ahead and review us, subscribe, rate on whatever platform you can. Plus, Mike gets all of his subscriber numbers or his self-esteem from those subscriber numbers and those reviews. He just loves it. It makes him feel so warm and fuzzy inside. It gives him the warm and fuzzies. He keeps a chart. And
I keep a chart.
Gives himself a gold star every time we get a review.
Stickers.
So go ahead and give him a review so the boy can feel good about himself again. It's sad over here. But anyway, it's very free to subscribe, to rate, to review. We give this freely to you, and it only takes you a second. So just go ahead and do it, and we'll feel really good. That'll help us out a lot. Also, make sure to follow us on all the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those. We post a ton of additional content and analysis. We live tweet a lot of games and stuff, throw out a few jokes here and there. It's a lot of fun. So go ahead and follow us on those. Stay connected. We'll form a little community here. It'll be nice. Since the last episode that we did, the Royals have become a new-ish team, right? Michael Massey and Kyle Isbell and Nate Eaton, they play regularly now. Ryan O'Hearn hasn't sniffed the field in a couple of weeks, which begs the question why he's still on the roster, honestly, but we'll come back to that later. Brady Singer, Chris Bubich, and Daniel Lynch are pitching like they belong in the major leagues, which is nice. It's clear that the Royals have turned a page, which is good. I think it's useful sort of to stop in this moment and talk a little bit about what we've seen from the new look Royals and what we hope to see from them for the rest of the season. Mike, what's been the most compelling development to you of this new look Royals team?
For me, the fun, young offense is the most compelling, though I don't believe it is the most important. Right? I think what happens and what develops with their pitching is the most important thing. That will be what leads them to winning baseball. But boy, is it not fun to watch Vinnie Pasquantino or Nick Pratto taking at bat, or watch Bobby Witt Jr. on the bases, or Nate Eaton. Every time Nate Eaton steps up there, I'm like, ooh, something crazy fun's going to happen.
That was still fun.
And he strikes out, but I'm like, that was still fun. Like, and watching him in the field's fantastic as well. Like, just watching these guys, Massey getting up there and like, yep, I'll get another hit. There you go. There's one. Like, just watching these guys is extremely compelling, the young guys. And Salvi has, found a little bit of a power surge as well. He's starting to look like the hitter that we wanted him to be again. And so, yeah, the offense has been extremely compelling, although I don't know that that's necessarily.
Yeah, you mentioned the pitching, and that's the thing to me that actually is the most compelling, because I was a little bit less sure. I was confident that the offense would come around when these young guys made it up, right? When Michael Massey came up, when Nick Pratto and Vinnie Pasquantino came up, I thought, okay, the offense will be solid. I wasn't so sure that the starting pitching would ever turn around, and some of that is starting to turn around. So Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich are the two that I'm like, I think we kind of knew that Singer had this in him. I was not 100% sure that Lynch and Bubich had it in them to turn it around and become solid major league starters, but that's what they've done over the course of the last roughly 10 starts for each of them. I mean, they've really been more consistent the last few weeks, and that's really something that I think is much more important, and is, it makes the game a lot more watchable when you know that they're not going to be out of it in the first or second inning. And Lynch and Bubich are actually providing that for them. I've been especially surprised by Bubich, and sort of I just wasn't sold on his turnaround early on, because the secondary numbers didn't look so great, but he has really found his command and found his ability to miss bats a little bit more, and it's really leading to some more success. Yeah.
Let me ask this. Do you think he has thrown a little bit harder at times in the last 3 or 4 starts? Do you think that is one of the reasons we've seen better results? And second question here, because I don't remember if I was talking about this on Twitter with somebody or if I wanted to and was just like, I don't want to write that much, but I feel like if he's the kind of guy who, because he'll hum it in there at 94 or 95 on that fastball, which if he can command that, that's a game changer for him. But if he can only do it for 5 innings, I'm okay with that. Like, give me that stuff for 5 innings, we'll pull you, and then that'll be okay. If that's the
I think what he's learned to do is that when he needs
in my book
a little extra velocity, when he needs to blow a ball by somebody, he goes for his fastball that can go 94, 95. I think that's what you're seeing from him occasionally now, which is great. I don't think that's necessarily the reason for his newfound success. I think his command has gotten a little bit better, and that's helping him a lot. I think especially his command with the secondary pitches, because some of his problem before wasn't just that he would walk people, it's that he would walk people and then he would hang a changeup right over the middle of the plate, and they would clock it out of the ballpark. And that was really killing him early on. Look at his home run numbers early on in the season. They're terrible. He got rocked out of the ballpark. He's keeping the ball in the ballpark, and that's really helping him a lot. I think it's a command issue mostly, but it does help that sometimes he can rear back and throw it 94, 95, get a fastball by somebody up in the zone, and then he really throws them off and sets up his changeup and his curveball a lot better. I do think in the offseason he should incorporate that slider that he was working on and maybe become a 4-pitch pitcher, and he could have maybe even more success. But for right now, Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich emerging a little bit here towards the end of the season is a big, big development for me, and a really compelling aspect of this new Royals team. You mentioned that people are really excited about what the lineup is doing. They've been essentially average. If you look at their stats, a lot of their stats, especially their overall stats, have been about league average. They're like right in the middle of the league over the course of the last few weeks. Mike, what's your assessment of the lineup as it's currently constructed in terms of its ability? Is it effective? Is this the lineup we need to see moving forward? What do you see when you look at the lineup that the Royals have been running out there?
Yeah, I think it's very much the lineup that we need to see moving forward. That's obvious. We've been starting 6 to 7 rookies regularly, which I think is important. I do think the lineup needs more seasoning. I think as we see guys like Michael Massey and Nate Eaton and Nick Pratto, I think Pasquantino's approach has kind of kept him from experiencing some of these things. But I don't think I think you'll see them not go 3 games in a row where they touch nothing. And then, one game where they just go off. I think it'll become more consistent at the more plate appearances those guys get moving forward. And that's going to be great because they just need a little bit more time seeing major league pitching. And that's what seasons like this are really for. The thing that I think that this also, the end of the season here needs to be for, figuring out what best ways they platoon together, right? So is it going to be where you don't want Kyle Isbell hitting lefties, or maybe you don't want Nick Pratto in every day against a tough lefty? So figure out what the best way for, like, I think right now they're figuring out that Nick Pratto is a pretty damn good left fielder. Okay. And so I think you're starting to see them try and play him in left more, which gives Pasquantino more time at first, where he's, I think, adequate. He's not going to be Nick Pratto at first, but he's adequate. And that gives them more flexibility in that DH spot with Melendez and Salvi, who probably need to use that DH spot a little bit more. And so they're starting to figure that stuff out. I want them to figure it out more as they continue to go here. What really sucks is that Olivares is hurt, because you figure that he's probably part of this platoon setup, and you just don't know. But I guess Rooker maybe will take that.
The weird thing about Olivares,
I don't know. We'll see.
We talk about how they don't have a set outfield right now for the future anyway, but they got a lot of options, honestly. Like Rooker, Melendez, or Pratto is going to play out there in some way. Isbell's going to be out there in some way. Eaton's going to be out there in some way. They got a guy named Tyler Gentry who is just destroying Double-A pitching right now, who might factor into it in the future here. And so Olivares becomes kind of like he's a bad outfielder. He's not good in the outfield. Do they look to move him in the offseason? Because he can hit. And so some team's going to want some guy who can hit. That's a good question, I think, to start asking. But I think you're right. I actually think they're still like 1 or 2 pieces away in the lineup. Like, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't think you should be playing Nicky Lopez every day. I don't think he's an everyday player, but right now he basically plays for them every day. And so I don't know what the answer there is, because they don't have an answer at third base right now. Unfortunately, they traded Emmanuel Rivera away, who is now crushing in Arizona. But we'll see on that front who their third baseman of the future is going to be. And maybe you're trading Olivares and some of those for somebody who's going to be your third baseman, or maybe you sign a third baseman. But in some way you have to get –
well, we've talked about this too. Like, we've kind of talked about this. Like, we're kind of all writing off that maybe Bobby Witt Jr. is your answer at third base.
But then Nicky Lopez – in my mind, Nicky Lopez shouldn't be playing shortstop every day either. And so –
but maybe it's Garcia. Is it Garcia? Maybe it's Michael Garcia.
He's still got a year, or maybe not a year, at least a half a year of development left to do at minimum. And so, I don't know. That's a big question mark in my mind. Somehow the lineup that they ultimately end up with, I think, is not this exact lineup. I think they're still one piece at least away from having the lineup that they really, really want moving forward. But as you mentioned earlier, lineup isn't really going to be the big concern moving forward. It's going to be pitching, because, the pitching is really the thing that keeps you in ball games, the thing that, determines whether or not you're actually going to be competitive and successful. The starting rotation has taken a step forward, which is nice, but it's clearly still missing a piece or two. There's been a hot debate online about how they should go about acquiring their next pitchers. Mike, how do you want the Royals to address the rotation moving forward?
So, when this idea kind of came up, Alex at Royals Farm Report had kind of hinted and danced around and talked about these things. I'm like now all on board. Just stop developing pitching, Royals. You suck at it. Stop doing it. Okay. From now on,
Either in prospect capital or
and we
actual
pay
capital.
for all of our pitching. Okay. It eliminates it eliminates the attrition. It eliminates, all that stuff. It's too hard to do anyway. The unpredictability. We're just going to buy pitching from now on. But no, I really do think that they need to create a list in the offseason of free agent pitchers, and they should be in tiers. These are our tier 1 guys. If we get a guy from tier 1, that's the only guy we're getting. Okay? This is and the guy I have down on here is Carlos Rodon. He's the number 1 guy I would target. They're not getting Jacob deGrom.
They shouldn't want Jacob deGrom at this point.
They can't even afford him if he's the only guy they get.
Too profound. He does too. That's true, but DeGrom's been hurt this year.
Well, and Rodon's got plenty in injury history as well. I mean, let's be honest.
To pay that much for him, to me, makes less sense.
Yeah.
Especially if, for a team like the Royals, you can't miss on your $25 to $30 million a year pitcher.
Yeah. So I would look at Carlos Rodon as my tier 1 kind of guy, and then maybe you don't get anybody else if that's the case. You try and do it with everybody else you have. You got Brady Singer, you got Lynch, you got Bubich, you got Zerpa, you've got all these other guys, Heasley, Keller. You fill it in with all that, okay? If that doesn't work out, we can't get a guy in that tier 1. They don't want to come here because they got to want to come to Kansas City as well, right? And we don't want to give them 2 extra years to come to Kansas City, stuff like that. I get it. Okay, then you go to that second tier and you sign 2 of them, okay? Now, that second tier is a little tougher because you're still talking about some expensive guys here, okay? But I like the Chris Bassett, Mike Clevenger.
Okay, some of
those guys that are
behind the curtain.
A lot of these guys are in their
list that is literally written on my rundown
solidly.
right now. You son of a bitch! What are you doing? Okay.
Okay, but I was going to talk about them anyway. Okay, so all right. Well, I didn't throw. So like Noah Syndergaard's another guy. I would put him in the tier 1 category. And here's why. He's a tier 1 guy you might actually be able to get a little cheaper because his numbers aren't great this year, but he's in the first year of recovery from Tommy John. Next year, he'll be in year 2 of that recovery. Yeah. And so you're kind of buying low. It's still going to cost you a fortune to get him, but you're buying low and hoping that, okay, we're at least going to get what we got this year and possibly a step forward. And so that's another interesting approach you could take there. But again, he's got guys got to want to come here. So, but you get 1 or 2 of that.
I think so too.
Honestly,
this year. I want to give credit to whoever this is. I think it was David Lesky put out on Twitter the other day that the Royals have about $70 million committed for next year's payroll. That means they have quite a bit of money to work with, somewhere probably in the $30 to $40 million range to work with in free agency. That's a lot, and so they can commit some money, especially to those second tier guys. They can commit some money to that. Guys that this is why I would prefer them to go do that instead of like trading prospects for them. You have to give so much in prospect capital to get a frontline starting pitcher that it almost seems not worth it. Like they don't have a ton of prospect capital anyway, because a lot of their guys have graduated and they need those guys in their lineup. And so you can't really, maybe Edward Olivares is a guy you could trade. Mm-hmm. Maybe I would say Tyler Gentry, but I wouldn't want to trade him, right? Like, maybe Nick Lofton. I don't think they want to trade him either because that position versatility can come in really handy later. And so they're definitely not. And so it's going to be tough to put together a prospect package that's really good or that you really want to give up for any sort of starting pitching. Go out and buy it, right? You can get Nathan Eovaldi. You can get Tyler Anderson, who they faced today and is having an amazing year for the Dodgers. Mike mentioned Chris Bassett and Mike Clevenger. There's some other guys out there. The tier 2 and tier 3 starting pitching market this offseason is going to be pretty deep. And so, go out there, be players in that starting pitching market. You may not want to give them extra years, like a second or third or fourth year, but maybe you give them a couple extra $1 million in the second, third year because you want to save some money for Bobby Witt Jr.'s free agent years or whatever. But there's pitching out there to be had on the free agent market.
Yeah, and one good thing about doing it that way, the getting maybe 2 of the tier 2 or tier 3 guys, a lot of those guys are in their 30s pretty solidly. They're 33, they're 34, they're 35. You're not giving them super long contracts. You're not giving them contracts into the years where you're going to be doing ARB years with Vinny, because all these guys, Vinny, Nick Prado, Bobby Witt Jr., they're all coming up to ARB eligible at the same time. And so
your payroll,
as soon as they get arbitration eligibility,
just a little bit,
their numbers are going to go.
It's going to go It's going to go a little bit up,
higher,
right? Like every year, it's going to go boom,
way
boom,
up. Yeah.
Until you're paying them a lot because they're in their last year of arbitration, but all of them are. So it's going to be them, Nate Eaton. It's going to be all of them at the exact same time. And so, you're right. It is going to get more and more expensive. So you really want to try and get guys on, I would say, no more than a 3 or 4 year deal. If you have to do it for the right guy, maybe you go out and you give him 4 years. But
that was my thinking.
I'm down with that. Free agent starting pitching. And besides, you want somebody for more than just next year, because next year they're still not going to be all that competitive, right? They still got stuff to figure out next year. And so get them on a 2 to 4 year contract and get somebody who you think can be a centerpiece of this rotation alongside Brady Singer, maybe even alongside Daniel Lynch if he takes another step forward. And all of a sudden this rotation doesn't look that bad, right? Like imagine with me, just right. Max Castillo,
with a little depth when you start to think
Parrish,
about
those guys,
Zerpa,
absolutely,
Heasley,
Hoffman, right?
Some of those guys.
But just
Max
imagine
Castillo,
with me a little bit a future where
Hoffman,
Nathan Eovaldi is up top of this rotation
Bolin.
or Tyler Anderson or whoever or Mike Clevenger is on the top of this rotation with Brady Singer, and then your third guy is Daniel Lynch, who's taken a slight step forward, and your fourth guy is Chris Bubich, and your fifth guy is John Heasley or Brad Keller or whomever. And then you have depth in AAA with Max Castillo and Jonathan Bolin and Zerpa. Yeah, that's not the worst rotation in the world, right? That's a rotation
Bolin,
that can keep
Castillo.
you in most games.
Yeah.
But the rotation isn't the only thing that matters pitching wise. And
Agreed.
Just because they keep you in a game doesn't mean the bullpen's going to allow you to win it. Lately, the Royals bullpen has been sort of a fart noise wrapped in a poop emoji. Like that's how I would describe it. It's like it's real bad. Reliability has been hard to come by in this bullpen. What is your thought on turning it around looking forward? Because we need some guys who are going to be more reliable.
Honestly, I never think about it. I don't think about turning the bullpen around because it's the last thing you tend to do as a team that's building, because bullpens are volatile, but they're also the easiest pieces to come across. And it's like, okay, so I never even think about it because I'm always thinking about the rotation and the lineup and all that stuff. But I'm not too worried, honestly. I still see the shell of a good bullpen here.
Stalmont,
with Barlow
really?
and Stalmont and Coleman as kind of your bedrock.
Did you see him
now, you and I have disagreed. Well, did you see him the other day?
Like garbage.
He was throwing 100 the other day and looked fantastic. Next day, looked not so great. I know. So, but I think that he can still be good. But you and I have always kind of disagreed about Barlow. I always thought if Scott Barlow was your best bullpen arm, that you needed one more top level guy. So I do think maybe that finding some sort of top level guy could really straighten this out. But maybe I've always trusted that the Royals can do that either organically through their system, taking some starter that hasn't worked out and making him a bullpen arm and he becomes very good, or a la Wade Davis, or they can go out and find some guy who some other team gave up on, a la a Joaquin Soria, and make him a really good bullpen arm. So, I feel like they can do it. I feel like they've got pieces. You got to get a mentality change in that our bullpen still walks way too
Honestly,
many
I don't think it's a coincidence that they drafted some guys
I'm
in
not
this
worried
year's
about
draft
I'm really not.
who nobody thinks are going to start, who were relievers in college. And so I think some of those guys, they're thinking, these are fast-track bullpen arms. We're going to put these guys in minor league baseball, and in a year, they're going to be pitching for us in the major leagues. I honestly think that they're going to be doing some of that stuff with some of the bullpen arms that they drafted in this year's draft. I think you're right. Next year is –
and there are some guys you could there's some guys you could reach down for in the system if they were surprisingly competitive next year or something, there are guys you could reach down and put in the bullpen.
Yeah.
You may not want to, but there's a couple. Beck Way,
that's probably true.
Could,
I do think you're right, though. Like, I don't think next year is the year to go out and find the bullpen that's supposed to carry you through the playoffs or anything. It's the time to go out and find those reclamations, those guys who, you pulled off a scrap heap and turned into good bullpen arms. I think next year's the year to find that, because you're right. I mean, look at you mentioned a few, Barlow, Stamont, Coleman, but I think they still have control of Clark next year. They have Jose Cuas, Gabe Spires. I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but he was good for them earlier in the year. I think he's still hurt, or I don't know, maybe he ran away somewhere because he didn't want to pitch for the Royals. I'm not exactly sure where he is, but dude, no clue where Gabe Spire is. I hope his family knows.
I
hope they know where
earlier.
he is.
Couldn't figure it out
but where's Gabe Spire?
I was looking earlier, and right before the show, so I just Googled Gabe Spire to see
if you know where Gabe Spire is, please
let
us know.
I assume he's
in AAA. Make sure his family knows, and they're get some peace of mind. But anyway, there's him. Richard Lovelady will come back off UCL next year. There's other guys who I'm a fan of Cuas. I think he's pitched well. They're just guys who look like the shell of a good bullpen. Yep. I think. If you go through next year and the bullpen hasn't taken significant steps forward, maybe then you go out and in free agency you start looking for real bullpen arms, or you start trading some guys for real bullpen arms or something like that. You can always find bullpen arms. It's really not time to start thinking about let's get a bullpen right now. The Royals hit the road this week for a trip that includes 7 games, 3 against the Minnesota Twins, and 4 in a sparsely attended days in Tampa Bay against the Rays. Mike, tell us about the Minnesota Twins. What?
I was just laughing because
I was looking for a bathroom.
Are there people who accidentally wander into Rays games?
You got a bathroom in here?
Is this a baseball game going on?
Yeah. So they're going to head to Tampa to play a good baseball game.
I got scared by the gator outside and just walked in.
Mike, tell us about the Minnesota Twins, who they'll face before they go to Tampa.
Well, the Twins are 58-55, second in the AL Central. Strong team, good young core. First game it will be Bubic against Joe Ryan, a 3.95 ERA for Joe Ryan, a 1.13 WHIP. Joe Ryan is a guy who throws a four-seam fastball, but he doesn't throw it very hard, 91, 92-ish. He throws a slider, a curveball, and a change, but 80% of the time he's throwing fastball slider.
It has good.
So
I think that fastball has good secondary.
It doesn't go very hard, but he does have a good slider.
And stuff like that.
He's had a good year
he should
too.
Be fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe Ryan, he does good for them. Here's another guy I never understood why people didn't like him more. Why he moves teams so much. Greinke's going to go against Sonny Gray.
That's another guy who's up in that 2023 free agent class.
Pretty
so
good.
The Royals could
have a different team. Feels like every year. Yeah. Okay. Well, he's having a really good year this year. 3.33 ERA, a 1.16 WHIP. He's got a really interesting pitch mix because he throws like 6 different pitches. But he throws his sinker the most, but he mixes it up a lot. So the sinker, four-seam fastball, curveball is what he throws the most. The curveball has been his signature pitch since he got into Major League Baseball. Throws a really, really good curveball, real downer. His sinker and his fastball go about the same velocity, around 92, but the sinker does have a lot of run to it, and he throws it. He throws all those pitches 20+%, and then he's got like 3 others that he'll mix in there sparingly. And so that's an interesting guy there in Sonny Gray. Tough matchup for Zach Greinke and the Royals. In the last one,
all sounds right.
Daniel Lynch will go against Tyler Mahle. Okay. Is it Mahle? Mahle? Mal? 4.40 ERA, 1.25 WHIP. He's got a real interesting pitch mix as well. And then he throws a fastball about 93. He throws a splitter, a cutter, and a slider. But his fastball has really good numbers. Like, guys really don't hit the fastball at all for a pitch that he doesn't throw super, super hard. his cutter and his slider, people have been able to hit. So hopefully we can pick those out. But that's why he doesn't throw those nearly as much. So
speaking of malls,
Tyler
I want to tell this mall story
maybe.
that I told you the other day. Did I tell you this story?
Molly.
I went back in time while I was on vacation. I went to a mall in this place I think called Carrollville or Carrollton, Iowa. I can't remember, but you know how malls are kind of dead nowadays? You go in there and nobody's in there, and it's like this was the most hoppin' mall I've ever been into in my life. It was packed. There was so much stuff going on in this mall.
Was there an arcade? Was there an Aladdin's?
They had the kiosks and the Hot Topics and all the stuff you would see in a mall. Okay, but there were just tons of people there. It was like everybody in this town wanted to be at the mall. You know, like it was in the 80s when malls were a thing, you know, like, and so I went there because there was a mellow mushroom inside this mall. And even the mellow mushroom was like 80s themed. Yeah. It was almost like the whole thing came out of the season of Stranger Things. It's like set at the mall, you know, like it was wild to me. Me and my partner were just like, where are we? Is this like, we thought we walked back in time. It was incredible. If you ever get a chance to go there, I think it's Carrollton. It was huge too. The mall was huge. I think it's Carrolltonville or Carrollton. I can't remember. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's not talk about malls. Let's talk about in weird Iowa towns. The Tampa Bay Rays are 16-53. They're third in the AL East, but they do have a hold of a wild card spot right now. So they're if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. The Rays are one of those just like really good, fundamentally sound teams that are good all the time, despite the fact that they have no money. They're getting good seasons from Yandy Diaz, from G-Man Choi offensively. It's just a real solid lineup up and down. Nobody's standing out. Nobody's going to win the MVP in their lineup, but they got guys who are all, you know, hovering in that 100 to 120 weighted runs created plus or OPS plus range. So that's good for them. They pitch very well. The Rays do, mostly because they don't worry about throwing their starters really long. And so they'll throw a guy 4 innings and then bring in a bullpen. Like, no problem. They love doing that. But they're getting very good seasons from Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, and some others. Good bullpen, really good defense. We've played them once before. Just a really solid all-around team. I think this week is a good test for the Royals. We keep saying that because, you know, but they played the Dodgers, who are great. They played the White Sox, who aren't so great. They're going to get 2 not great, but really solid teams this week. We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with our Just a Bit Outside segment, where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, you did not go to a mall in Iowa, but I'm sure you did something interesting this week. Tell us about what's interesting outside the world of baseball to you. Nathan Miller!
I actually kind of have 2 things. One, I want to give a happy birthday shout out to our boy Nathan Miller.
That's right.
Avid listener, good friend. This is also a test to see if he listens all the way to the end of the episode. Okay? So if he doesn't text me, Miller, I will know that you did not listen to the end of the episode. But I'm going to talk about a little hit movie called Encanto. Or at least I think it was a hit. I don't really know when it came out. But I just discovered it this week. My wife, in an attempt to make our media consumption more kid-friendly, has been trying to show me kids' movies, animated movies. For like, I don't know, a few months now since we had our son. And I don't like them very much. Except for I do like Aladdin. We rewatched Aladdin the other day.
Genius.
Still holds up. That holds up. That, but the genie, Robin Williams is a genius. Let's just start there. Also, almost no. I mean, not almost no, but for Disney, they did a good level.
That is to say, too much.
It wasn't.
It's still too much.
It was Disney. You know,
any
so,
racism
there's still
is
racism,
bad,
but
it's all bad.
Yeah, too much, but you know, but for Disney, it was low. But no, we watched Encanto the other day. What a friggin' great movie! You know. They did a really good job with Encanto. So if you're not a kid person, you're like, hey, I don't have any kids, but you like Disney movies or something, check out Encanto. If you have kids, I assume you've already seen it. But if you haven't, check it out because it is nails. It is my, like, you know, when we were kids, you know, Aladdin was
I can't remember. Yeah,
Lion King came out
when we were kids. Yeah.
What are some other good ones from when we were kids? I can't even think. I guess The Lion King, did that come out when we were kids?
Have you seen
Did
Big
it?
Hero
Okay.
6?
But man, if I were a kid today, I'd be watching Encanto.
That's another
every
really
other
good
day.
animated movie. You should check that out. Yeah. You'll like it. I promise.
No. Is it really? Okay.
I didn't love that.
Check it out. We watched another Lilo and Stitch. I wasn't a big fan of that
A
one.
lot of racism in that one.
Mulan.
Pocahontas is
fan
another
of
one with a lot of
Mulan.
racism.
A lot of racism in that one too. By the way.
But anyway.
So yeah, no. I always have to.
I'm talking about something that has nothing to do with the racism of Disney. I'm talking about this place that I went to in Chicago when I was on vacation. It's called the Globe Pub. So if you're ever in Chicago, you want a cool place to watch, especially soccer. This is a soccer bar in Chicago. When I got to Chicago, I was like, I really want to watch the Chelsea game because it was the opening weekend of the Premier League season. And I'm like, I want to watch the Chelsea game, but the Wi-Fi in my hotel room is garbage, and I don't want to just sit in my hotel room and watch the game. I'm like, let's experience the Chicago soccer scene. And so I'm like, what's a good Chicago soccer bar? I asked Google, and they said, go to the Globe Pub. And it is one of the best bars I've ever been to in my life. It was packed full of soccer fans. They had a bunch of different TVs with a bunch of different soccer games going on, and you could tell it's a great sports bar because in the bathroom there was like TVs right where the urinals were, so you could like watch the games while you're taking a piss. Brilliant. They have really good food there too, like insanely good food.
Yeah,
they made what are those things? Scotch eggs. My partner got some Scotch eggs. I know it was very Englandy, but yeah, good food. Great atmosphere.
Those
1,000
sound
different beers on tap. Not that matters to me. But like, it was just a really cool atmosphere to watch the Chelsea game. I highly recommend the Globe Pub in Chicago if you ever get up there. They didn't pay me for this in any way, but I'm just deciding that, hey, let's tell the world about this thing. I'll also be telling the world about the Kansas City Royals next week when you come back here and join us for another episode of Royals Weekly. After you've subscribed, rated, and reviewed us. I'm reading the reviews on the episode next week. Go out and give one. Make it awesome. Until then, be good to each other.